Centrumban a civil szervezetek és az az összefoglaló jelentés, amelyet a USAID nevű szervezet évente készít. A USAID-ről röviden annyit, hogy saját megfogalmazásuk szerint az a vezető amerikai kormányhivatal, amely azért dolgozik, hogy globálisan megszűnjön a mélyszegénység, és képessé tegyen életképes, demokratikus társadalmakat arra, hogy élhessenek lehetőségeikkel. Nos, a USAID évek óta alaposan elemzi a civil szervezetek működését, immár 60 országban, köztük Magyarországon is. Erről évente összefoglaló jelentésben számolnak be, és ezt mindig nyilvánosságra is hozzák. Az idei jelentés 2013-ról, tehát az előző évről szól. Igen sok szakember, igen mély és alapos elemzés alapján készített el, és segédeszközül szolgál politikusok, diplomaták számára is. Ezért is külön öröm, hogy az amerikai követséget vezető ideiglenes ügyvivő André Goodfriend úr stúdiónk vendége, és közvetlenül is kérdezhetjük őt. Welcome to our studios, Mr. Goodfriend. You're pretty busy lately, and one of the events you attended was a press conference about this annual report, which generated a lot of interest, and all the points, the analysis sort of provided for the public became kind of lively and became something we can look at in context of everyday events. So how do you feel about the report, which is a deep analysis, and the everyday current events?
Well, first, thank you very much for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be able to discuss something as important as this with you and with the audience that's watching. Concerning the report, concerning the events that have, and the discussion that's taken place afterwards, this is this 17th annual report with regards to civil society sustainability highlights how important we as a government, we as a country, believe civil society to be. That it's something that enables citizens to continue engaging in the life of their community, to continue speaking out with regards to how they want their society to develop, and to continue working with their governments, with local governments, with national governments, between elections, because in a democracy, the role of the citizen doesn't end with the election; it continues onward. And for that, for citizens to be able to continue engaging, it helps to be organized, to be able to have people who think similar to you and are willing to commit their time, commit their effort to helping shape society. It's a concept that's not just in the United States. I mean, this has been one of our basic concepts since our founding, since we had people who chose to come to this territory, which became the U.S., and shape a society through their own efforts, and create a government that had its authority from the people. But this is also, frankly, a concept that has been here in Hungary for some time as well. Let's say in the middle of the 19th century, as the subjects of the Habsburg Empire, the Hungarian subjects of the Habsburg Empire, took their future in their own hands to say, we want a government that listens to us, in which we can be a part. Or afterwards, as time went on, and under the communist domination, politicians, government employees, social philosophers like István Bibó in Hungary had a concept of the role of citizens in shaping their society and creating organizations, small circles of freedom that enabled them to unite in order to shape their society and to engage with a government to help make sure that the society is what they want it to be. So with regards to this report, each year now, because of the importance of civil society, USAID, which, as you mentioned, was an agency that helps with long-term development for societies, helps try to ensure that countries have the infrastructure that they need to facilitate democracy, and helps develop that infrastructure regardless of politics. And seeing that civil society is an important aspect of that infrastructure, of the role of citizens in shaping their society, they look to see whether or not the society has developed to the point where civil society, where citizens grouping together, forming networks, engaging in order to shape their society, they look to see, are these organizations sustainable? Is there a legal framework that will enable people to work together in this way and that will protect these types of organizations? Are they able to be financially sound? Are people able to contribute to civil society? Are they able to have access to the information that they need to have in order to have the effect that they should have as concerned citizens? Is it a democratic environment where the government listens to the voice of the people? What is the media environment like? Are they able to speak out? Are they able to talk with each other over the different media channels? And so this report looks at civil society and its sustainability within a number of countries. And each year they publish a report identifying whether or not the level at which civil society is sustainable in that country. Here in Hungary, there was a high point for civil society because Hungary was one of the countries that left the Eastern European communist environment with one of the smoothest transitions, and as I'd mentioned, this concept of civil society that philosophers, that political scientists in Hungary had envisaged with citizens taking an active role in shaping their society, and some of the political parties that exist now were civil society organizations at the time. Hungary moved over successfully into becoming part of the Western European liberal democracy environment. And it had, just before it became part of the EU, civil society was at a very high level. The infrastructure was very highly developed, perhaps better than many of its neighbors. What these reports, or these series of reports, seem to indicate is that after becoming a member of the EU, that through a series of governments, through changes in legislature, through changes in the environment, the trend in Hungary was for civil society to become weaker, for people to be less encouraged to participate, for there to be less access to the resources they need to continue their activities. These reports now show a negative trend line with regards to the sustainability of civil society in Hungary, to the point where it is almost at the point where it becomes not sustainable. And this is one of the themes that we, as the U.S. Embassy, has been discussing following this press conference release of this report. We've been discussing what is the environment here? What are the trends? How do we work together as citizens of a democracy, as citizens with shared values concerning the role of citizen participation, concerning the need for organizations like civil society, the value of democracy, the value of transparency, the value of a free media, free speech, etc. How do we work together to ensure that that negative trends don't continue and that we have the type of societies that we want to have for ourselves and for the future?
So you have your own questions with regards how you could or you should work together with the Hungarian counterparts, Hungarian friends, because you mentioned several times that this is a friendly discussion with the host country. What is where is the room for you as a diplomat, or what the American government can do and can achieve during this process?
As you just mentioned, we do see ourselves as friends, as representatives of a nation which does share values and has a long, intertwined, interconnected history with Hungary, where Hungarians helped us in our revolution in 1776, where we supported the cause of Lajos Kossuth and those who were seeking to create a Hungarian state in 1848, 1849. So we have this long connection as citizens. And with regards to how do we assist in realizing our values, apart from belonging to organizations like the United Nations, like the OSCE, like the OECD, and like NATO, organizations where we have defined what our shared values are, and that we both believe that a strong civil society is important, that transparency is important, that citizens play a role in shaping their government and shaping their society. The United States has developed working together with the Clinton Global Initiative, now has a Stand with Civil Society initiative in place for a year. This is in 2013. This initiative was started. It's 2014 now. Through this initiative, in addition to the support that we've given financially to civil society organizations in the past, we're looking at developing what we would call incubators for civil society, similar to the type of innovation incubators that Hungary looks for with startups to help people who have wonderful ideas about how they might create a business. How do they find partners? How do they find people who can help them develop those startup businesses? Well, the same thing can go for civil society, as you have people who are engaged with their neighbors, with their municipalities, and have an idea for how they could develop a small circle of freedom, a civil society organization that might be for their neighborhood, might be for their town, might be for the country, but they don't know how to get it started. They don't know how to develop this idea into something real. An incubator, a place where they can meet with others or talk with others who have experience and be able to share that experience, is one way that we as nations can work together in developing civil society. Other ways that we assist are when there are organizations that are facing emergencies, that are facing crises. They're not able to get the funding that they need in order to continue working. We contribute to funds that will help these organizations continue and get out of the emergency situation that they're in. Or working together through international legal frameworks to try to ensure that countries have the laws in place that will enable civil society to flourish, that will protect citizens who are part of civil society organizations, that will highlight the rights that people have to be able to speak out, to be able to organize, to be able to have the access to information that they need in order to contribute and be part of an active civil society organization. This concept of having consistent legal frameworks within different countries is something, again, that we see a role for the United States to work together with Hungary and with numerous other partners around the world to highlight the value that we place on civil society.
And how do you evaluate civil society in the United States in these days? One of the press conferences was a good opportunity for you to mention that the United States listens to even criticism from outside and evaluate what other countries or people in other countries might say about processes in the United States. But actually, how do you think the civil society acts in the US in these days? There was a major movement, the Occupy Wall Street movement, which is kind of a civil society movement. And of course, there are the organizations, a very well developed network of organizations reaching many, many goals. It's a very vibrant sphere of social activity in the US. So how do you think it works right now?
Yeah, there's a saying in the United States that all politics is local, that people have to take an interest at the very local level in order to shape things at a larger level. So many civil society organizations they can be they can begin at the neighborhood level, such as neighborhood watch organizations, people who care about their neighborhood and just watch to see who's there, to know what if things are not as they should be, and to just show that there is a concern for their neighborhood. Parent-teacher organizations are also an example of local civil society where parents are actively engaged together with the local school system. And in the United States, schools are organized by districts so that one district may have a slightly different curriculum than a neighboring district, and the parents play a role in shaping the way that the school teaches their children, the type of after-school activities that they might have. There are religious organizations, church organizations, synagogue organizations, mosque organizations. There are fraternal organizations, just groups of people that want to do good things together, such as the Rotary clubs or the Lions clubs, Kiwanis clubs, Elks. There are a number of different animals that they've named clubs after. The Knights of Columbus is also a Catholic civil society organization. There are groups of people who come together within their communities to try to do something good for their community or to contribute money to a cause. And in addition to that, recognizing the importance of safeguarding the rights of minority communities, of vulnerable communities, of those who may not be able to speak out for themselves in the same way. There are going to be societies for the protection of cruelty to whether it's animals or societies that will advocate for the rights of people who can't speak up for themselves. Sometimes it also means standing up against the majority. If the majority opinion is contrary to the laws of the land. Going back to our early history, or back to the history in the 19th century, some forget that the Republican Party started as a party which was standing for the rule of law versus the Democrat Party, which was for the rule of purely of the majority on the question of slavery, with the Democrats at the time saying if the majority advocates slavery, well then that should be fine. It's what the majority want. The Republicans were saying that in a republic, sometimes the law takes precedence, and that even if the majority might want something, there has to be a voice that stands for the law above the majority, and to say that this is wrong, even if the majority want it. And so they stood for the principle that slavery was wrong, even if the majority in the South wanted it at the time. And it's this type of voice, this voice advocating for the rights of minorities, for the rights of smaller groups, for the rights of those who can't speak for themselves as effectively against what may be the overpowering will of a majority, which is also a role for civil society. We have organizations like the American Civil Liberties Union, which has taken very controversial positions, which may not seem controversial now, but they were at the time, such as advocating for the teaching of science concerning evolution in the classroom rather than not permitting teachers to teach about evolution in the classroom. Or advocating advocating on behalf of integrated classrooms instead of segregated classrooms in the 1950s, advocating for even the right for hate speech, the right of those who wish to say hateful things because it's their opinion. That right exists in the United States, and organizations, some of the civil society organizations there, will advocate that people have a right to express their opinion, even if it may be hateful, because in the United States, those who will speak on behalf of inclusion, of diversity, they should know that they can speak out as well, and that we have this marketplace of ideas, of different ideas that we can respect or disagree with, accept that there are going to be disagreements in our societies, but that we're stronger because we have this open discussion, that we have this open difference between different perspectives, and that we don't forbid perspectives from being discussed. That also is part of why our civil society environment is so vibrant, because we recognize that every group, every perspective, unless they are specifically advocating, inciting to violence or inciting to cause harm to someone, but if they are advocating a political perspective, if they're advocating a view on society, that we respect that in a democratic environment, these views should exist and should be discussed, and that the government should be open and should support having them discussed. And this again gets to the perspective that governments should play a role in protecting and ensuring that civil society organizations can exist even if those organizations present views that differ from that of the government. That the government is stronger if it can accept differing viewpoints rather than trying to suppress those viewpoints through law.
By the way, you have a tremendous experience as a diplomat internationally, from India, from the former Soviet Union, I suppose, in Africa, many countries, just recently Syria, you served in Damascus as well. How would you see the world, our world, as far as civil society is concerned? These are very different societies. Do we have anything in common, anything universal, sort of?
Yeah, most of my work in these different countries, and as you mentioned, that I've been now with the State Department since 1987. And have served in quite a few countries, just to rattle them off. Israel, India, Moscow, after the fall of the Soviet Union. It was from 1994 to 97. The United States, working on conflict prevention issues. Germany, but working with Africa. Britain, Syria, and now here. But most of my work has been focused on consular matters, on visas to the United States, or on providing services to our own citizens. And if there is a common element in all of these countries, at least from my perspective, it's that people have an interest in managing their own life, that people want to be engaged, that people want to be understood, that they all have different perspectives, but that it's possible to talk with them individually as people, face to face, eye to eye, or in groups, and you can communicate. Many concepts are similar, whether it's the concept of the value of the person, that everyone, no matter what economic level, no matter what level of education, has a view, and they want respect, and they want the ability to be able to discuss that perspective. Sometimes they do it more loudly than in other places. In Israel, there is a very vibrant debate upon the role of different religions, the role of different ethnic groups within that society. In India afterwards, where the entire population of Israel could have fit into one neighborhood in Delhi. It was fascinating to hear the different perspectives of this huge tapestry of people. Sometimes one neighborhood didn't know the type of people that were in the next neighborhood. They all had their unique view of their own history, and their view, because it was such a large country with many different languages, that view may have differed from one part of a city to another part of a city. In Russia, when I was there, in some ways similar to here, the entire world had changed for them just a couple of years earlier. I mentioned I was there in 1994. So 3-4 years earlier, they'd gone through a regime change as well. And much of what the people living there had thought was true about the world turned out not to be true. And there was a lot of questioning about what is our role now in the world. How do we develop our sense of identity and refine our place as a great nation within the world? And so that was a fascinating discussion, a fascinating place to be during that time as Russia was coming to terms with its new identity in this very changed world after the regime change. In Syria, there were questions at the time about the relationship between Syria and the different peoples within Syria in creating a modern Syrian identity, not just an identity based upon ethnic group or upon religion, but one in which people had a sense of who they were as a Syrian nation. And was it possible for all of these different groups, the Sunni, the Shia, the Alawites, the Christians, the Assyrians, the small Jewish community that was still there, was it possible for them to have a common Syrian identity and to join the 21st century as a modern state that could work well with its neighboring states? Unfortunately, at the same time as they were trying to develop this identity, they also had to deal with the fact that they had a very strong dictatorship as a government that was keeping the peace through force, and that was not allowing political discussion, political dissent, and was also not providing opportunities for a younger generation within that country. And ultimately, this sense of hopelessness about the future, this sense of not wanting to, of not being able to actually participate in their own society and shape the course of their own society, led to the civil unrest that started in Tunisia and worked its way through North Africa, through the Gulf, eventually into Syria, and as we're speaking now today, still is ongoing. But here again, now in Hungary, hearing people talk about their desire for freedom, the way that they've had this long passion for freedom that the government recognizes too, that Hungarians, like Americans, value freedom, value the importance of them shaping their society, of wanting to work together with their government to create a society that meets their ambitions. I mean, this is a dream that is shared around the world, that we share in the United States with Hungarians, a very human dream about human potential. I mean, here in Hungary, there is even a ministry which it's usually translated into English as the Ministry of Human Resources. But really, perhaps a better translation is the Ministry of Human Capacity, of human potential, that it's a ministry which focuses on the wealth of knowledge and experience and potential that exists among the Hungarian population. And that's where we can partner in trying to help realize this potential, just like we hope to realize the potential of our own citizens in the United States, that citizens around the world want to have their human potential, their human capacity realized. And they want their society to reflect their ambitions, and they want to be able to tell their government how to serve them, rather than to have their government tell the citizens how the citizens should serve the government. I think that's a universal desire, particularly now in the 21st century.
Mr. Goodfriend, I can almost hear some of our viewers watching this and listening to your analysis, which is really wonderful, and asking themselves, so when is he asking about the visa issue? When is he going to go into details? And as a matter of fact, we are not going into the details because you have a lot of opportunity to explain those views for the Hungarian public. But let me ask you something else related to this. When a diplomat like you, you're running the US Embassy here in Budapest, so you have a huge responsibility. And you notice that your President Obama, you mentioned the Clinton Global Initiative, has a comment on Hungary as well. And also there are other platforms when Hungary was criticized. You as a diplomat, how do you handle a task like that? Because probably you have to work on those things, those issues are related to everyday relationships. So is it a big dilemma? Is it a big headache when a situation like that happens?
Well, I think that one of the challenges as a diplomat now in the 21st century is how to have conversations with the government and to know that things that are said in private at some point will probably also be public discussions as well, that there's very little which can be restricted to a private discussion because with so many different media channels like this, but not only like this particular program, but now with new social media, with the internet, with governments having their own websites, we have our own website at the embassy. The embassy also has a social media platform, Facebook or Twitter, and I began to try to use these media myself, so that I've tried writing on a blog, and now recently using Twitter as a way to communicate more publicly, and trying to ensure that what we say in private is accurately reflected with what we say in public. So over the course of years, we have been talking with the government of Hungary about the same issues that we're discussing publicly now, sometimes relatively quietly, as we talk about the changes between the different governments, depending upon which one was elected at the time, as we try to understand what that government's vision is for its society, as we work together as allies in NATO, or as Hungary becomes part of the larger EU environment and trying to figure how do we work together with both Hungary and with the EU at the same time. And then dealing with the challenges, as I'd mentioned, of public discussions. We cannot keep all of our discussions in private. Congress has required, ever since President Carter's administration, has required that we publish annual reports with regards to human rights. So we publish an international human rights report. What is our assessment of the human rights situation within all of the countries where we have diplomatic representation and a few others? Because Congress wanted to be sure that we were not saying one thing in private to a country, but another thing in public. It wanted to be sure that our messages internally and externally were consistent. And since that time, we also have had a number of other reports that we publish every year with regards to things such as international religious freedom or trafficking in persons or the investment climate or the advice that we give to our citizens, to American citizens before they travel to a country. We have to be sure that we have no double standards, that we don't tell our diplomats one thing, whether an environment is safe or not safe, but tell our private citizens something different. We have to be consistent. We have to be sure that we can say the same thing in private and in public. And there have been times when our private communication, things that we thought might be private, have been published or leaked by others, endangering sometimes the people that we've spoken with if they were talking to us in confidence and they were living within a police state which might have objected to their discussing things with us. And sometimes people talk to us more freely if they think we won't publicize that these things are being discussed with us. But we have to recognize that we're in an era where we can't expect that our discussions are going to be private. So now I've been here in Hungary for just over a year. We had been discussing the nature of democracy, the new constitution, the various amendments afterwards, the different laws, the religion law, the media law. All of these had been part of both our private discussions and public discussions. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, when she was here, it was highly publicized for discussing the rolling back of democracy at the time. So this certainly was an aspect of the discussions with the government in Hungary at that time. And then, of course, like I mentioned, each year we have these other reports in which various observations are recorded. The report on civil society sustainability was also something that we would have discussed with the government. So now the trends, as I'd noted, were highlighting decreasing transparency. They were highlighting a less sustainable or an environment in which civil society was less sustainable. There were concerns about the investment climate. These various trends, while not making Hungary worse than its neighbors, Hungary still has some advantages over its neighbors. But the trend was negative, so that if the trends continue, then Hungary could find itself in a position where neither its citizens nor its government would be happy, because they would now be worse than those around them. And as an ally, as a partner, as someone who has this long history of sharing values and working towards the same objectives with Hungary, like I'd mentioned, over 200 years of partnership, we've been discussing with the government how these trends can be addressed. That we are serious, that there are facts there, that we're not misinformed, that we're trying to reflect an accurate picture of what's happening here, and that we hope that it's taken seriously for Hungary's own sake. And so that's been some of the discussion. Certainly, it had reached the level to which President Obama noted in his speech the concerns about civil society. But these were not new concerns that the president was raising. We had noted concerns about intimidation of civil society at the OSCE in June 2014 and in September, shortly before the president made his remarks. At a conference on the region, Assistant Secretary Victoria Nuland also made comments about concerns about the region in which several countries found themselves, but Hungary certainly noted that some of the comments by Assistant Secretary Nuland matched the situation here in Hungary. So this environment was one where with lack of transparency, with centralization of authority, with the intimidation of civil society, with self-censorship among media, that the environment was ripe for corruption. And in an environment like that, one would expect that there are going to be corrupt public officials. We have to ask ourselves, are there corrupt public officials? If there are, then what's the appropriate course of action for the United States if we identify them? And by our laws, if we identify corrupt public officials, particularly since it's impacting American businesses cannot be competitive effectively in corrupt environments because we have a Foreign Corrupt Practices Act which would penalize American businesses if they engage in corrupt activity. So when an environment becomes corrupt, we have Presidential Proclamation 7750 requires that that if there are public officials that are corrupt, that they not be permitted to enter the United States. So that's a decision that we made with regards to certain identified public officials and some who were linked with the government. We advised the government here that we had identified certain officials as being involved in corrupt activity, that we would not be admitting them to the United States if they were to go to the United States. And we wanted to let the government know in advance because we assumed that these officials would let their employer, the government, know that the U.S. had taken this action. We didn't identify who these people were because that's between us and the individual. We did tell each of those individuals directly that we would not be, that they are excluded from the United States, and left it to them to tell their employer. But we took that initiative quietly. Like I'd mentioned, we told the government that we had made that decision. We said that the government itself already had similar information to the information we had and could take its own action separately, but that we were taking our action specifically with regards to visas. And that for us, that was the end of the matter. We had taken the action that we needed to take. However, for whatever reason, one of the newspapers in Hungary published a story which mischaracterized what had happened, made it appear that there were U.S. companies that were being investigated for tax purposes, and that we were retaliating against the tax authority by not permitting members of the tax authority to enter the United States. We had to counter that with what was actually the case, that we still are not aware of any American companies that are undergoing a tax investigation. And that rather than this being something in a retaliation against this imagined tax investigation, we had excluded certain government officials from the United States for being involved in corrupt activity. So that's where this particular story is now. We hope to be able to work with the Hungarian government on as we have done for years, with regards to assisting in any investigations they might have. But really, the initiative has to be taken by the Hungarian side with regards to looking at the information it already has and choosing to act upon what already is in its hands, rather than expecting that the United States would tell it exactly what cases it should pursue. Because we don't see that as the role of the United States to tell the Hungarian government which cases of corruption to investigate and which ones not to investigate. That's a decision that the Hungarian government can make.
There's one thing for sure, this interview and conversation will be widely public. So thank you very much, and please come again.
Thank you, my pleasure.